I would bet that the person that's walking around depressed, saying they suck and all of that stuff, if they were to actually do a tally of what they did from when they got up to when they went to sleep, they would find more things going well than not. But human being wise, we focus on what's not going well.
Hey guys, welcome to the Troy Gramling podcast. I am honored as always to have you come and hang out with me for just a few moments. Our heart from the very beginning, we're already in season 2, but our heart is always to help you reach your potential. I believe with all my being that you were created on purpose to do something of significance, to be something, and we do it best in community. And that's what we're trying to create here. So thanks so much for being a part of it today. If it impacts you, be sure and share it. There's someone else, I'm sure, that needs some of the content. And you can go back. Man, we've got 100 episodes in season 1. I'm not sure we're going to do 100 episodes every season, but you can go back and check out those archives and leave a comment below. And if you haven't subscribed, it would really help us out because, as you know, it's all about what YouTube says it's about, or any of the platforms we're on. Anyways, today is really a special day because I have a guest that I'm excited for to hear from, excited for you to hear from. I have Dr. Gordon with us today. So thanks so much for coming and joining us the second time.
Yeah, I had so much fun the first time I came back.
I don't know, I could have the producers. I think, is this our first repeat guest? Like only person we've had? Oh, we've had others? Oh, we had a couple. Well, you're not the first. But you are one of the few that we've had on second time.
I'll take it.
Well, I want to just kind of jump in. We were talking before they turned on the cameras a few moments ago, and I was asking you questions about the difference between a psychologist, which is what you are, right? Mm-hmm. And a psychiatrist. And I was thinking, as you brought up, like anxiety and how it's treated, you know, people, lots of people wrestle with that. You often hear about that. Mm-hmm. And like, I know if I take my temperature, it's 98.6, right? Is a healthy temperature. That's been established. This is healthy, and anything, you know, too far under it or too far over it. So in mental health, how confident is your profession, the medical community, in that we have established what is healthy? In other words, you know, like anxiety, as other emotions that we deal with, you know, there, like you were saying before we even turn on the cameras, there's a range.
Yes.
So, like, what is unhealthy anxiety and what is?
So my profession, we have the DSM, which is basically our Bible, right? So it comes with, so let's say anxiety, it's going to come with a bunch of things to look for. What age, the onset, blah, blah, blah. And so we look at that and you make a diagnosis. But for me, I think a little bit differently about it because, one, I think first, humans. Again, I think we come with anxiety. It's just downloaded. It's given to us freely. Emotions, so forth. All of that, I think, affects your anxiety level. So I think it will be a version of, okay, the person in front of you, what's their level of anxiety? I know your question is baseline for all, what's their level? I think if your anxiety becomes so intense to where you can't function, then I think you need to see somebody like me.
Okay.
And it doesn't have to get to that level, but that's the crippling level.
Right.
So that's like on a scale of 1 to 10, that would be 8, 9, 10, where people can't, anxiety, but depression, whatever it is. when you can't function, when people have depression and they're in bed for 2 days, nothing matters in terms of the outside world, then of course come see somebody like me. But even before that, I think just in general in our day-to-day lives to take inventory of where you are. So for me, mental health, the term itself is a bit boxy,
Right.
because when you say mental health, it's what exactly is that?
Right.
I think it's just how do we stay healthy in general? I think for me, there's like three pillars, right? So there's the spiritual part of us, the physical part of us, the mental/emotional part of us. And so I think when those three things work in harmony, I think you experience the best of yourself, right? So if your spiritual man is good, physically you're eating well and exercising and so forth, and then you're taking a break from all the distractions. And I don't want to pick on social media. We were talking
Right.
about it because I do think there's a space for it, but I think we've evolved into a space where it's becoming too addictive. And so just like anything else, I would say, how's your relationship with it?
Right.
So it's not a good or bad thing. It's what are you using it for, and how important is it to your person? Meaning, is this causing more anxiety than not?
You mean, if you don't know where your phone is and you're freaking out,
Right.
that means
Yes. And so taking personal inventory, I think it's important, not just mental health wise, but all the pillars.
so. It's not, because it's not, which is something I haven't thought of. But in evaluating mental health or anxiety, let's say specifically, or depression, it's not. It's the symptom, not so much what. In other words, you're going to help them discover what's causing the symptom, but whether or not you need external help with it, it's not so much about what's causing it. Because that's what we tend to judge. Why? Your dog died. Why? What? You can't get out of bed for a week,
Yep.
right? We judge one another when it really doesn't matter what caused it. It's if the symptom gets to a certain part, then there's certain things
Yes.
you need to move forward.
And if it's consistent. So the only time you could really focus on what causes it, which I think there's not one thing that will cause it. It might look like that on the surface, like, oh, I lost my job, so now I'm depressed. People go in and out of careers all the time. So it's a matter of, one, what's your scale? Where are you on the scale? And two, when I'm in a session with anybody, I need to get to know you. Because if I use the DSM, for example, and just read a bunch of criterias, I have no idea who you are, why this is impacting you, why these criterias are even showing up. So in order for me to really understand what's happening, I need to know you, right? So I'll look at what's happening. I usually normalize a lot of things because for some reason human beings think we're like gods. Like we can't make mistakes, we can't feel things. So one, normalizing the human experience. It's normal to have some anxiety. Period.
Right.
How it's discussed though, if you have anxiety, there's something wrong with you, right? And that's not the case. It's like almost like a warning sign.
Right.
What I look for is, in this moment, is this anxiety, say, rational? So, for example, I'm afraid of gators. If I'm in here and I'm shivering about gators, there's no gators around. So it's not rational in this moment. So what's happening, why there's such a departure from what's happening presently to you going in and out of future or past. So that, your anxiety will look at that.
Wow.
If this makes sense currently.
Now it's so. What role Will, let me, I guess, ask you, when I think about, what you hear, and have we become softer? And I guess that's probably not maybe a good, that's got a
No,
negative
I like
connotation
it
too,
though.
but it seems as if things that would given in the past, an anxiety of 3 or would have discouraged or defeated people, today is a 8 or 9. And
Yeah,
everybody's kind of accepted that. Um, and I mean, do you see that? I mean, I know you deal a lot
I
with
do.
athletes and all of that as well. Because I hear things that teenagers and adults are struggling with, right? And the struggle is real. I mean, they're really, like we were saying earlier, they're feeling it. But then you're trying to think, in my experience, should that cause that kind of response?
Right. No, I hear your question. Good observation, because I've observed that myself. And I think it's evolution. I think right now, again, I keep going back to social media because social media is it's a very interesting thing because it's something that's never shut off. And I think we're becoming almost robotic in how we approach things. So we are housed in a human body, but we're becoming too robotic. So if you're in something constantly, my opinion is your anxiety or whatever you struggle with will be constant. So you don't get a break from it, right? So, for example, in schools, when you used to get bullied, right? You go to school, you get bullied, you go home, there's a break. There's no, you leave it alone, and then maybe when you're getting ready for school, it comes back, and you're like, oh man, I have to do this and that. But there's a break. Now it's constant. People jump on social media. There's no escaping the constant, pile on. And again, this is not like a war against social media. There is
Right.
space for it. But to your point, when we were growing up, we had structure for things, right? So you went out and you played for a certain time. You come home. I think there's a disappearance of structure that's causing a lot of these things that we struggle with. So as a human species, I think we're evolving. Social media is a part of that. That means you're required to expend more energy on things that, in the grand scheme of things, doesn't matter, but they influence us.
Right.
I do think and this is probably a terrible word, but we are programmable, which is why they used to say birds of a feather flock together. The sayings, by the way, are starting to become, they're starting to sound wise to me now. The more I guess that's the sign I'm getting older.
Right.
But before that meant nothing. Now it makes all the sense because your brain is programmable, which is why we have to monitor the things that we let in. We have to monitor the people we're around, because if not, you will become programmed by them. And what's a better word than programmed? It sounds too computery, I guess. But
Yeah. I mean, I think just controlled,
yeah,
in a sense. I mean, what gets programmed in is what makes our decisions for us and determines whether we go left or right, that kind of thing.
I even think about, because when I do, like, when I see a patient or a client, right, I look at like their family of origin stuff, because again, I do believe we're programmed. So if you're born with a clean slate, and then your introduction to your parents, they download whatever they believe, and you can't escape it. It's not good or bad. It's just what is.
Right.
And so your caretakers are usually the first people. So we learn what anger looks like. We learn how to express it. We learn we learn what to believe. Until we get old enough to kind of figure stuff out for ourselves, that's the first introduction. So there's a bunch of things that's programmed into you, that's downloaded from society, from parents.
Well, and I would say, and tell me what you think, that even as parents, the perspective you take as opposed to the word I use, controlling, as opposed to downloading. In other words, in the sense of whether or not you see your role as determining the direction of your children as opposed to empowering them. So I want to give them information so that they can make good decisions. I want to give them opportunities to make decisions so that they can develop those muscles, as opposed to I'm so determined where I want them to go.
Yes.
That then now, I'm, like you said, just really programming them. So
Yeah.
then they don't know, who they are. And they go through that,
Yeah.
horrible experience at an older age trying to figure out. And, what I've seen is then they tend to turn away from everything they've been taught, the good and
Yes.
the bad, because they don't know who they are. So they want to go back, to being an infant of, and like, I'm going to leave everything.
Yeah, listen, I agree with that. I think if you really look at it, the difference between what you're talking about is a conscious decision. And parenting, I think, is one of the hardest things. I'm a parent now. And I genuinely, I say to my wife about her mom, because I see it now. I see how difficult it is to actually raise a human being and think about, yours. Maybe because I'm in this field, I'm more conscious of how things impact people. And so I have tremendous respect for parents because, one, they're also human, which means they won't get it right. And I work with, again, family therapists. So I work with parents who blame themselves for things they have zero control over. But their belief system is, it's up to me to teach them these things. Now, how do you teach? Kids learn from just watching. They watch and learn more than what you say to them, because they will take what you say and put it up to what you do. Some kids, like I have two daughters, one will say it to you. Right? One will say, well, you said this, but you don't do it.
So does she take after her mom or her dad?
Oh, yeah. 100% mom. The other one is like me. She won't say a thing, but she'll notice it. And so the long and short of that is the decision you make matters when you're raising kids, because whether you intentionally do it or not, they are learning from you, which is why I say we get stuff from them. It's downloaded. For example, I was watching my mom eat the other day. Like, we're chatting and I'm just noticing how she eats. She eats exactly like me. She never told me that. She never said, this is how you should eat. I guess since I was young, that's how we eat.
Right.
And so that's how I eat. That's how my brother eat. Like, all of it. And that's just one example, but that's what I'm talking about. We're, for lack of a better term, programmed. And then we go through life, and these programs starts to clash with your belief system. You meet other people, they bring in stuff and clashes with that. And so you start to learn about life. I think that's usually where some of the issues come in, whether it's depression, anxiety, whatever. It's clashes with something. Mm-hmm. My recommendation is not to get rid of it. It's to say, okay, what's going on here? And to actually understand it.
Right.
Understand why this is clashing. Because, again, we evolve. I
Right.
believe human beings evolve. We get more information. We listen. We learn. It filters through our brain. And then we decide, does this work for me or not? And to your point, sometimes it doesn't if you're raised a certain way, because you never get to express your thoughts on it, because parents are maybe militant. And so you bury it. But one day, either you will leave the house or you force your way out the house, and then that's when the rebellion comes.
Right. Yeah. You were talking about social media, and I was thinking, and I know you work with athletes as well, and I was thinking, have you seen how many athletes are participating in the sport? And then this would be maybe true for life as well. Participating in the sport for the joy of the sport, as opposed to not really, living life or participating in the sport for social media. In other words, it's like the mind is not about enjoying this game or enjoying this moment. The mind is on what's it going to look like, online,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
so how I run down the court to how I mean, even live life. Have you seen more people miss life because they're doing a lot of amazing things in the sense they're traveling and doing this and doing that, but they're not living them in the moment. Their mind is like, is this a short or is this a long form or is this a picture?
Yeah. Yeah. So it's interesting you said that. I was watching this interview, like 30 seconds, of a young lady interviewing Russell Westbrook. Now, I know you're a basketball guy, so you know Russell Westbrook.
Oh yeah.
Russell gets a lot of hate. Like, he's very good, but whenever he gets questions, it's always just really just negative press. And this young lady basically said, congrats on your 24,000 points. How do you make these amazing shots? Just basic, just question, but it's not negative. And his whole mood changed. I see that a lot with athletes. They buy into the expectations of people that don't even play the sport. But it's a part of their job. They're reporters and they have to come up with stuff. I think athletes' relationship with sports would be much different if the questions they're asked about is different. So their relationship to it would be different. Slight tweak,
Right.
which is you did well, how did you do it, versus you were one rebound away from a triple-double.
Why didn't you get it?
You're right. You're the worst, right? And it's like, these people are superhuman. They're doing stuff that's, you're in awe, right? But yet, they're treated like just unfairly, in my opinion.
Why? No. Okay. So why do you think, as human beings, that, we're talking about evolve in the sense of learning and growing, that kind of thing. Why are we still so much more, it seems, aware of the negative as opposed to the positive? Because long before social media, it was getting to read an article or in the paper or whatever. And I know with social media, it's the negative. Oh, that was a great movie. Nobody clicks that on.
Right.
It's the worst movie you ever saw. And that's like, oh, I gotta. And so then the industry, whether it's whatever, is driven towards the negative. And so why do you think we haven't, knowing that positive is going to bring out a better, outcome? I wonder why we haven't, as a species, as human beings, done something about that.
Yeah. That's a great question. I'll tell you my theory. I would like to hear yours too. My theory is, one, I think being human, we mostly pay attention to what's not going right? So, for example, you don't pay attention to breathing until you're running out of air, whether, you're stuffy and you feel like you can't breathe, or you're underwater and you need to come up right away. But usually you don't pay attention to your breathing, right? You just know it's happening. I think it's the same for relationships. Most of the couples I see, they don't really pay attention to what's going well. It's usually what they're not doing well. As a parent, you pay attention mostly to what your child is not doing, or, what they messed up or whatever. And so it is a skill to train yourself to I guess, at least balance the equation where you are also remembering the positive stuff. Even your self-talk. If most people I talk to, their self-talk is horrible, including myself. My wife will tell you, you need to, like, why do you think so negatively about stuff? But I think it's human. I think first the self, we typically say really not nice things to ourselves that we wouldn't say to other people. And so, in this field, I'm learning a lot from my clients as well. I'm learning just what most people are more alike than not. But we tend to focus on the little differences, cultural differences. Wow, they're different.
Right.
99% of the things are the same. One little difference. But I think that's human. So evolution of that would be just practicing as a society, as a person, to hold space for, to not believe solely that the thing that's not going right is the only story. Because if you just keep track, I would bet that the person that's walking around depressed, saying they suck and all of that stuff, if they were to actually do a tally of what they did from when they got up to when they went to sleep, they would find more things going well than not. But human being wise, we focus on what's not going well.
Yeah, we do. We tend to do that. I think of, in Genesis, when it talks about God creating humanity, he says, very good, right? And everything else is good, but humankind is very good. And I wonder sometimes that as a result, there's this, you could say, longing, even from, when sin entered the world and corrupted things. And I wonder if there's in a spiritual sense of that we know what we were created to be, and but we can easily see that we're not there. That sin, like you said, we're human. We make mistakes. We get angry. We do those things. I wonder if we're not then attracted to the negative, because in the end, it makes us feel better about ourselves. As opposed to looking at who we can be. We forget, that Jesus came, and he came to reconcile. He came to give us life abundantly. And we, instead of focusing on what, we can be because of Christ's redemption, I think we tend to, that we have that longing for that very good. And it's a lot easier, maybe for me to make you a little less than it is for me to embrace, what Jesus came to create us to be, and so we're always, it's almost in a sense selfish, because it's like, well, why do I care if that movie's bad? Well, because I've had, Disney's wealthy and they're rich. So how can I, rather than try to become, it's just easier to, they're human too, that kind of thing. And that makes me feel better about myself. And so sometimes I think we look to the wrong thing, maybe to find that sense of fulfillment, or that sense of purpose, and that sense of joy. And
I think I'm trying to think as you were talking about how do I tell people, like in my practice, how to deal with this stuff. And you mentioned Jesus, and it just really, it brought me back to what I actually tell people as the stuff that we're born with, the stuff that's free, the stuff that you don't have to do anything crazy. So one is you're human. To remember that. I think as humans, we have to remember what that means. That means, as far as I know, we get one physical journey on this planet. So you're doing this thing for the first time. And you're looking up to people who are not perfect. So parents, role models, they will make mistakes, so forth and so forth. And our expectation is it cannot be perfect. I mean, it needs to be perfect. So if I asked you, do you think you're perfect? If I ask most people, they'll say, no, of course not. That's ridiculous. If you watch their expectation and their actions, they think they need to be perfect. So one is going back to basics. So what does it mean to be human? It means we're plugged into a source. And so refill. So the stuff we tell people is stuff you would tell people.
Right.
Right? Which is, one, take inventory. What's going on? Reground. Go back to basics. Praying for some people who don't believe in God, then okay, meditate, whatever you need to do to take a break. Take a break from life, the normal hustle and bustle, parenting roles, job, role of being a father or husband or whatever. Take a break, like recharge, connect to the source. Look at nature, go into nature, just really unplug and get away from your phones. I ask people sometimes like to take inventory. So you're saying you're feeling this. What's the opposite of that? It's very basic stuff, but we get so busy and so important, we forget it. We simply just forget it. And so remembering that, one, if I had you follow me all day and say the most horrific stuff to me, I will say, get away from me. We do that all the time to ourselves. Only nobody could hear you.
That's,
right?
no, that's good.
It's baking in the oven,
Right.
and it's baking a stinky pie. And then you try to show up for your life. You try to show up for your family. You try to show up for work. But internally, you're not happy with yourself. You're saying horrific stuff to yourself. At some point, that will come to end. So
I wonder, as you're saying that, on a spiritual perspective, the Bible tells us that we're not perfect, right? And the Bible says that's what the law, right? When we think about the 10 Commandments and all that, it's not, it's an impossible level to live up to, right? And the Bible even says there's none that do, there's none righteous. And so the Bible really is about how then God wants to make up that difference. And so he sends his son, all these things that he does. He's filled with grace and mercy, right? His expectation is not that we be perfect. His expectation, and I wonder, okay, just as you were talking, I think then all of this bad stuff I tell myself about myself, why'd you do that? And you're never going to win and all that. In some sense, I wonder if there could be arrogance involved in that, in the sense that rather than trust Christ to make up the difference, I truly want to make up the difference. I want to be that person. I want to not need him.
That's good.
I want to be perfect, And so rather than, it's easy, not easier, but I rather yell at myself for not being perfect than humble myself and rely upon his grace and mercy to make up that difference, and religion kind of does, without that relationship, it is the opposite, right? Because people think about the Bible, they think about religion, they think about all this stuff, and they think, well, I can't be, that it's demanding perfection.
Right.
When in reality, it's just the opposite.
yeah, that's very good. And it brought me to, okay, so I'm going to tell you the first time I saw you, right? So we talk about program, right? When I first saw you, you're on stage, you had like a sleeveless shirt, and I saw all tattoos, and I go, wow, what's this? This is not church. This guy's a pastor? Because my programming was a pastor has to have this long suit. I grew up Pentecostal.
Right.
A pastor have to have this long suit on, sound a certain way, look a certain way. Then you opened up your mouth, and I said, wait a minute. Okay, he doesn't look like a pastor, but he's saying some stuff here. Came back. Okay, he's saying some stuff again. So that's evolution for humans. You're taught something. You believe it. It's a part of your belief system, and you don't even know you believe this stuff. I just know when I looked at you, I go, wait a minute, that looks so different from what I am told a pastor is. But then I heard you, and I couldn't deny what you're saying makes sense. That does something to me. You start to feel, you start to question, I call it muddling. I love when clients muddle, because that tells me they're thinking for themselves. They're experiencing for themselves. That happened to me. So then that clashed with what I grew up thinking a pastor should be. So essentially I boxed in a pastor, and they can't look different from that.
Right.
Until you came along and kind of tore open the box. So now I evolved in my thinking of what a pastor is. And I think that's really it. The stuff we carry around, examine it, muddle with it. Like, don't make yourself wrong for it, whatever it is.
Right. Well, the truth is strong enough to deal with what you would say the muddling. That's why I don't have to. Sometimes as parents, we're worried. And again, I'm not saying you let your kids play with dynamite, but I'm just saying muddling is good, because then it becomes your wife could have said, no, he is a pastor. You know what I'm saying? And
which she did, by the way. Because she brought me here. She was like, no, you're going to like him. And I'm like, I don't know.
But the truth is, we can have confidence in the truth. I mean, the truth is more than just words. And I think whatever the subject is, you know, the truth can be trusted. Well, I want to thank you for being here. I know the time has gone by so quick. We'll have to have, you know what? You're going to be the third. Yes, you're going to be the first person to come a third time, because I really enjoy talking about that. And I know all of our listeners and so many, it's a big conversation that, you know, people are having, and yet we don't understand it all. We become judgmental of one another, and instead of helping, it can actually hurt. So it's an honor to have you. And like I said, we'll come again and talk a little bit further and help people out along the way. How can folks get a hold of you?
Right now, my Twitter, at the Athletes Therapist. So that's athletes with an S, therapist without the S. At Twitter, that's my handle right now.
All right. So check that out. And this month is mental health awareness, I guess to continue for people to be aware of that and to have the conversation and talk.
Yeah, and the last thing I'll say is, if you are on the scale and you're, say, 7, 8, 9, and you're really needing help, reach out to someone. You could use Psychology Today, Google, therapists in my area type of thing. But don't stay there, because it gets progressively worse. And so, again, part of this is human. It's just a matter of, how do I get unstuck? And people like me could help you do that without being too intrusive. So take a leap of faith and come ask. And if you're not 7, 8, 9, or you're just really struggling in certain areas, same thing. Reach out to someone and talk it through. Take inventory with yourself and be kind to yourself.
That's good.
You're human.
That's good. You know, I wonder, I bet we used to, if you look back and you think how society has changed, a lot of that, you know, when you think, you know, you're at that 4 or 5, it happened on the front porch, you know what I mean? With people, the conversations and over tea and stuff that we don't do anymore. So,
I did an article called The Kitchen Table once, and it was about that. Like, back in the day, we could talk and process and muddle, and it made it better. Even if nothing changed outside, but your relationship to it is different. So
now everything's gotten so political. You got to be careful where you muddle.
Yeah. That's another topic, but yes.
We'll talk about that next time.
All
right, guys. Hey, thanks so much for tuning in to be a part of our podcast. If you heard something that helped you, I'm sure it would help somebody else as well. So just click that share button and pass it along. Give us a thumbs up. And hey, leave a comment below. What are some of your experiences? What are some of the things that have helped you as you just think through life, right? Life is not easy. And as Dr. Gordon said, we are all human and we all have to walk down that path. And hey, that's one of the reasons we're here. We just want to partner with you. We want you to win. I believe you were created to win. And so check out, hey, we got the podcast. We do a live stream where we just have some fun. We've got some teachings. And if you'd like to check out the weekend teaching, go to Potential Church. That's the handle, and it's on all the social media. So once again, we'll see you next Thursday. Have a great week. God bless. Wait, before you go, if you're enjoying our content, check out this interview or this one here. They're both really good. And don't forget, subscribe. It's really important. We'll see you next time.